again, welcome to another tutorial. Making game is easy with Unity and Playmaker. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to create a 2D physical platformer. Yeah, I know we've done that before, but this one is different because we are going to do a 2D sprite based character. So this is not a 3D at all, a fully 3D tutorial. Before we jump into it, I just want to make sure that create a new project and then import the needed packages such as a Playmaker Animator add-ons, and also Playmaker Unity 2D add-ons. And I've also created a package for the levels, and I will upload this file so you can download and use it for the background, and also the sprites. I've created a sprite, already created a sprite character, and this is how it looks like. So we are going to use this character for this example. So okay, let's do this. First, I'm going to change the sprite mode from single to multiple, and then I'm also going to change the format size, the format to from compressed to true color, and then click apply. I'm going to leave the max size to 1024 because this is the same as our image file, so that's going to be okay. Click apply, and then I'm going to go to the sprite editor. We are going to need to slice this character, and this is already sliced because I've already tried before, but first we have to change it to the grid size. For you guys who haven't done this, change the type to grid, and then the pixel size for the X axis to 128, and for the Y axis to 256. And I'm going to put the pivot on the bottom. So click slice, and it will be sliced like this. After that, click apply, and this will be applied to the character. So we have a bunch of sprites that we can use for the animation. Okay, the next step, we are going to drag the first pilot boy. Sorry, scratch that, not the first one. I'm going to drag, the first will be okay, and then I'm going to create a new empty object. This empty object will be the player, and we will put our character inside of it, and this game object will be the one who handles the movement, physics, and all sort of the FSM. For the pilot boy, I'm going to rename this to a simple pilot boy, and then I'm going to reset the transform to 0 for the position, and that will be okay. And also I'm going to drag the pilot boy inside to the player, and I'm going to also reset the player transform values, so we will have like this. Okay, and then I'm going to save the scene first before something happens. You never know with computer. So I'm going to name this 2D Sprite Platformer. So next, after we save the character, I'm going to adjust the transform first to 0.0, and then I'm going to put the character slightly down so the feet aligns with this line. And if we can see, if we choose the player, we will see the pivot aligns with our character feet. So that is what I want to do. And the next step is to create the animation first. Okay, in order to create the animation, I'm going to choose the pilot boy and open the animation window. So we are going to create a new clip, and I'm going to save that inside an animation folder. I've created this folder. If you haven't, just create the folder. Then I'm going to choose the idle anim, and I'm going to override this. So here I'm going to change the sample to 25, and then for the idle I'm going to pick the frame 11 or the sprite number 11, and I'm going to drag this for the idle, and that will be all for the idle. And then for the run animation, I'm going to create a new clip and then also type run because I've already created, so I'm going to overwrite this, and then I'm going to change also the sample to 25, and then I'm going to pick the first frame, first frame, we can say it frame, the first one, and then the last of the running animation is the 10th or 11th frame. So I'm going to drag all of the animation, all of the slice sprite into this animation window. So as we can see, if we click play, it will play the animation. Next, I'm going to create the jump animation. Just click the jump or create type jump inside of it, and then I'm going to change also the sample, and this one is going to start from frame 12 to 21, and I'm going to drag all of it into our animation window. And here the jump animation is too quick, as you can see, so I'm going to prolong or make the hanging pose longer here by selecting this 5 frames and drag it to maybe around 20 frames. So here, as you can see, it will stay longer on the air. Okay, that will be all. Just close the animation, and that is set for the animation. So the next step, we have to add a physics 2D component. First, I'm going to add a rigid body 2D, and make sure to check the fixed angle so it doesn't rotate or falling, and then add another physics 2D, and I'm going to choose a box and a circle collider. I'm going to open both of this collider, and I'm going to adjust the value. So I'm going to move the position of the Y axis here, and change also the X size maybe to around 0.65, and then also slide this a bit, and I'm going to change the radius to maybe 0.35 and move this slightly. So this will be our collider, and then that is set. So the next step, what we are going to need to do is to create a background. So let's do that, but I'm going to save as always. Better save than to be sorry. So go to the package, and I'm going to import this package by double clicking it, and I'm going to click import. So we will have a prefabs folder, and here I'm going to drag the ground to our hierarchy, and as you can see, the ground is created, and this is consists of a lot of sprites that I've already created before. And for this asset, if you want to create your own, you can open the game.com/public domain game art here, as you can see the path, and this is a discontinued game, and the artwork has been made available for public domain, so you can download the PNGs or the SVF if you want to, or maybe the FLAs, and I'm using this one. So cool, let's do that. And I've already created the ground, so for this ground I'm going to add a polygon collider. In order to use polygon collider, you have to hold shift to move the point. So like this, by holding shift, choose a point and then drag it here, just like this. But if you want to add a new point, you will have to click shift in the middle of the edges. So like I want to create a new point here, just shift, hold, click the edges and drag the point. I'm going to fine-tune the shape of our collider. So it will conform, but a bit of a tip, don't make too many points, especially for mobile games, because it can be quite heavy for the performance. So I think this will be work okay for the ground, and that will be all for the ground. And make sure that your ground have a tag ground. If you don't have it, just create a new tag by clicking this add tag and type the ground. So we are going to use the tag for later detection. Okay, back to our player. Open the playmaker window, and I'm going to add an FSM to the player. This one are going to handle the movement, so I'm going to give it a name of a movement for the FSM, and for the first state I'm going to also give a name movement. Okay, I'm going to create a new event for flip left and flip right, and you will see what this event going to do. And I'm going to create a variable, as usual, the x speed as a float, and I think that will be all. So first I'm going to use a get axis, and then type the axis name horizontal. You can see this axis name inside the project settings and input. Here you can look for the axis that you needed. I'm going to go back to the character, and then I'm going to set the multiplier to 3.5, and I'm going to store the value to the x speed variable that we have just created. Make sure check the every frame, and then I'm going to use a set velocity 2D, because of course we are using 2D physics, and then feed the x value, the x speed variable to the x value, and also check the every frame. Now we are going to determine when are the characters should facing left or facing right, because we cannot use the set direction just like the 3D ones. So we have to detect by getting the key down. Okay, I'm going to add another action that get key down, and this key down will be the left arrow. Where is it? Sorry. Okay, this is for the left arrow, and if left arrow is pressed, go to the flip left, and I'm going to copy this action, search for the right arrow, okay, and then flip right. Okay, going to minimize this. I'm going to add a new state, 2 different state, and for the first state I'm going to name this flip left. Add a new action called set scale, and for the x-axis I'm going to disable the parameter button here using parameter, and I'm going to set the value to -1, and then I'm going to copy this action and paste it to the second state, and this is for the flip right. Oh sorry, I'm copied the wrong action, so I'm going to select the set scale, hit Ctrl C and then Ctrl V to paste it, and here I'm going to change the value to 1. Okay, so I'm going to link the flip left to the flip left state and the flip right transition to the flip right state, and here I'm going to add a finish transition also for the other state and go back to the movement. Okay, let's see if it's working already. There, as you can see, it's working nicely and it follows, but there is an animation yet and we cannot jump yet, so we are going to address that soon after this. So the next step, I'm going to change the order to 5, so the characters will sorted in front of the ground. And then for jumping, okay, it's been a while since our first 2.5D physical platformer, but I've managed to create a new method for jumping, and I think it's better because we don't use a trigger anymore. So I'm going to name this to jump, and then I'm going to create a get button down action in the first state, and this is jump. And then we need to create a new event, do jump. On press, send the event to do jump, add the transition do jump. So this is getting jump button, and then create a new state and name this jumping with exclamation mark, so it is obvious. Add force to the action onto it, and change the Y value by disabling the parameter button, use parameter button, and I'm going to set this to 350. So I'm going to link this, and then I'm going to add transition finish and drag this. This will work, but the character will be able to jump infinitely on the air, so it's kinda like cheating. So I'm going to limit the jump only once by checking whether the character is on the ground or not. But this time we are going to use raycast action, raycast 2D action. We are not going to use a trigger anymore, another object, so this will be more efficient, I think. So I'm going to create a new state and name this check landing or landing check, whatever you want to be, and then create a new event called on landing. So I'm going to add that transition on landing, and for this I'm going to link from the finish of jumping state to the check landing, and then on landing back to the getting jump button. So here we need to create a new variable, game object variable. I'm going to name this ground obj. Oh, and make sure that the type is game object. And then upon check landing, I'm going to add a raycast to the action, and I'm going to change the distance to 0.2. Yes, the space itself, and the direction to in the y-axis to -1, so it goes in the direction down to the ground, and store the hit object ground obj. But we will have to create a use the layer mask, so I'm going to insert the value of 1 and use the default layer, and make sure that the character is on the ignore raycast layer, and yes, of course, change the children also, so it will not store our player inside this variable. It will only store the ground object. Okay, and then we are going to use game object compare tag action, and this will be the ground, of course. Upon true event, go to on landing, and this game object we will retrieve it from the ground obj. So also check every frame. Okay, so here I'm going to save this first and we will see if it's working or not. So right now it can jump, but does it able does it can to jump twice? Let's see. Oh, it can. Oh no, it's jump infinitely. So we have to fix this. Okay, the problem is when we raycast, it will store the ground object, but upon landing we will have to reset that variable. So I'm going to use a set game object, choose ground obj and set this to none. Okay, so let's see. Okay, we can only jump twice. It's like a double jump, but we actually don't want that. We only want the character to be able to jump once. So I'm going to make sure to fix this. Simply add a wait action. Apparently the loop is going too quickly, so the first jump it will go back to the jump button and the second will stop here on check landing. So I'm going to add a wait on our second state, and then for the wait action I'm going to set the time to 0.1 and on finish event go to finish. So this will work nicely. I have tested it. So we cannot jump twice on the air, but once we land that we can jump. And I think this method is better than our first physics platformer, and back then I was also still learning with Unity and Playmaker, so this is a new method I found easier and more compact, more efficient. So I'm going to save this. The next step, we are going to deal with the animation. So I'm going to go to the project folder under animation. Okay, I'm going to delete this one. Perhaps this is the older, and we are using the Pilot Boy one. Okay, so I'm going to rename this for the sake of tidiness. Okay, I'm going to rename this to Pilot Boy, and under Pilot Boy we already used that controller. I'm going to uncheck apply root motion, and I'm going to double click this Pilot Boy controller, and I'm going to arrange these states of animation. So we will have to create 3 different parameters, and the first one is m underscore x speed. You can choose any name you want to, but I'm going to choose this. The m stands for the mechanism underscore the x speed value, and then I'm going to create a new boolean m grounded, and also a new trigger for jumping m underscore jump. So we will have to create a transition from idle to running. So I'm going to create that by right clicking and then choose make transition, drag to the run. And for this to happen, I'm going to change the condition to when the m underscore x speed's value is greater than 0.1, and vice versa, from run to idle. Create a transition, click that transition, choose the m underscore x speed value for the conditions, and change the condition to less than 0.1. For jumping, we are going to transition the jump animation from any state. So jump can be happen when the character is idling or when the character is moving. So click right click on any state, click make transition, and then choose that transition, and then choose the m jump trigger. And with trigger we don't have any parameter to set, because it's only executed once. So that will be all, and then create another transition from jump to idle, also jump to run. Click first transition, and I'm going to use am grounded to true, and then add a new condition by pressing this little plus button. And then for the second one, I'm going to change the x speed to less than 0.1. Likewise, for the jump to run animation, I'm going to use the m grounded, but with this one I'm going to set the parameter greater than 0.1. So that will be all with our animator. And now let's get back to our character, get back to our scene, and as usual I'm going to save. I cannot stress you enough how important to save often of your scene, because if something's run wrong, you're not gonna regret it. So let's go back to player and go to playmaker, and let's create a new FSM. And this FSM is for the animation, so I'm going to give it a name animation, of course. And the first state are going to handle idle and run. And I'm going to create a event idle run, and also anim.jump. So for anim.jump, make sure it's a broadcast event so it can be accessible from other FSM. And this one I'm also going to change its name to anim_idle run for the sake of tidiness. And then I'm going to check this broadcast event, and then I'm going to add that transition as a global transition under idle and run for the idle and run, and create another state for jumping. And this one is going to be jumping, of course. Add a global transition anim_jump. And for this we will need to create a variable. So I'm going to create a new xSpeed variable inside. One thing about my new method is I'm going to use local variable as much as possible. I'm not going to use a global variable anymore, because global variables get shared across the objects, so it's not the best way. So I'm going to use a local variable, but we have to add one bit of action in every state that we are going to use, and that is a get variable. So I'm going to use a get FSM variable, and here I'm going to use the owner, but I'm going to get from the movement, and I'm going to get that variable xSpeed. So in order to use this get FSM variable, we have to create a exact same name as our variable that we want to retrieve from other FSM. So yeah, that's the rule. And inside this, I'm going to check every frame. I'm going to enlarge our playmaker windows, is too small. And then I'm going to make sure that our new variable stay on the positive value. So we are going to make that variable absolute, and also check every frame. And then I'm going to set the animator float value that we have created here. Just copy the name m_speed, and then I'm going to paste this here, and then I'm going to specify game object. But we have to specify, and I don't want to drag the pilot boy every time we set a component for the animator. So I'm going to create a variable, the mechanism car or character, and change this to a game object. And inside this, I'm going to drag the pilot boy as the game object. So we are going to use that variable, and I'm going to check the every frame. Okay, for jumping, I'm going to set a animator trigger and also animator bool, and just like before, we are going to use that variable we have created before. And for the bool, we are going to use this to feed this boolean, whether true or false. And then for the trigger, I'm going to set this to jump m underscore dot jump as the trigger, and we don't have any other parameter. I'm going to move this to the top stack of the action, and for the set animator bool, I'm going to copy this action and paste it into our first state here, but I'm going to check the value or make sure that the value is true if we are in this state. So I think that will be all for our animation, but we have to add a bit of action in our jumping event. So on our first states in jumping event, I'm going to send an event and change this event target to game object FSM, and then I'm going to pick animation, and here I'm going to choose anim idle run. I'm going to run it only once, so I'm not going to check the every frame, and then copy this send event, go to jumping, and upon jumping I'm going to send the anim jump event to our animation FSM. So there is a lot of step, and I hope it is working okay now. So let's see. Okay, what seems to be the problem? I want to check first. Okay, we have this. Okay, so I'm going to stop the game and then check the animator. Our inspector is, yeah, it's already correct, greater than 0 point, and vice versa. Here on the animation we are getting the X speed, okay, from the movement every frame. And we are going to, okay, sorry, this is where I forgot. Under set animator float, we are going to choose this parameter, but we have to type the value, or we have to feed this value using our created variable. So I'm going to use this X speed, and make sure check every frame and save the file again, and let's try this one. Sorry, I'm going to click this. Okay, it's working nicely, but if you go back, it doesn't work. So I'm going to make sure what is wrong. So here what's went wrong, just a simple mistake. This set animator float has to be under the float absolute. So I'm going to move the ordering, so make sure that this action get executed first to turn the variable to a positive value, and then we feed that positive value to our parameter. So save it again and then try it. There, as you can see, our character is moving nicely, and it also jump. Upon jump, it plays the animation jump. I think this is a bit annoying, so I'm going to hide the state label, go to debug, and then uncheck this show state label. Here, as you can see, it's working nicely. And one thing, for the jump animation, we have to remove the loop option. So here I'm going to uncheck the loop, so it doesn't loop. For the run, we are going to keep it loop, and for the idle also loop. And then for the camera, I'm going to use my custom action. So I'm going to choose the camera, and I'm going to add an FSM, and I'm going to add an action platform 2D camera, and this you can download it from the example files, and make sure put this script platform 2D camera.cs inside the playmaker actions here, and this is the file I'm going to show you. Here, so download this file with the project files, and then put this exact files inside playmaker actions so you can use it. And then I'm going to drag this player as the game object that we are going to use, and then set the height to 2 and side damping maybe to 1 so it can be slower, the damping is smoother. And then for the camera I'm going to set the size to 3.5 perhaps. So let's see if it's camera moving nicely. There you can see the camera moving, and it has a slight damping to it. So there you go, a 2D sprite based physics platformer, and this is all of course a physics, so if you create another sprites with a rigid 2D body, the character will be able to push that object. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and I hope this tutorial also helpful for you guys who wondering how to create a 2D based character and how to drive the animation, the movement. And on the next part I'm going to cover on creating a moving platform for this 2D based, also a one-way platform. So thanks for watching. If you like, please subscribe, and happy game making.